I'm Ben. I'd gotten used to staying up late, sitting alone at the dining room table, only my laptop's soft light and the ticking clock breaking the silence. I expected tonight would be just like every other quiet evening, and for a while it was. Then suddenly, it wasn't. Through the window I'd left slightly open, Hannah's voice slipped inside. She was on the porch, speaking quietly enough that I had to strain to hear, but once I did, I couldn't ignore it. I stopped typing immediately. Her voice was familiar, yet the words I caught turned my blood cold. "Michael, you just don't get it," she whispered urgently. "If Ben ever figures this out, and no, the kids haven't guessed anything." Her words struck me hard, leaving me dizzy with shock. Michael? Who was this Michael, and why was she talking about the kids? My kids. Our kids. I forced down the panic rising in my throat, struggling to keep myself steady enough to keep listening. Then her next words made everything worse. "I know they resemble him, but they're yours, all three of them." Everything froze. The silence that followed her confession seemed to stretch forever. My hands shook, suspended uselessly above my keyboard. Soon Hannah finished the call, her voice fading into silence as she stepped lightly back into the house, carefree and casual as always. I didn't confront her. I couldn't bring myself to. My thoughts spun wildly, questions and fears fighting for attention. Had I misunderstood something? But her words echoed in my ears relentlessly. They were too clear, too final. Slowly I shut the laptop and leaned heavily into the chair. Memories of our life together rushing through my mind. Hannah and I had been married over 10 years, creating a home and a family together. Now every memory seemed poisoned. All those late-night hospital calls she'd claimed were emergencies, her vague answers and tired smiles whenever I pressed for details. Had they been lies all along? By morning, I knew I had to do something. Confronting her now would only give her the chance to twist things, make me doubt my own sanity. What I needed was proof, undeniable facts. So I called a private detective a friend had recommended, a tough-looking but sharp guy named Rob. I didn't go into every painful detail, just enough for him to understand the basics and get started. Rob didn't hesitate to get started. At first, his reports trickled in slowly, showing Hannah's days were completely ordinary on the surface. She'd drop off the kids, run errands, even grab coffee with friends occasionally. Nothing suspicious. But soon the cracks appeared. One supposed emergency hospital call turned out to be a meeting with a man at a cafe just outside town. Michael. Rob managed to get a clear photo, a tall guy with an arrogant smirk that immediately got under my skin. Their meetups were cautious but intentional. Sometimes a quiet park bench, other times a dim corner of some bar. They were careful, but not careful enough. Rob gathered everything meticulously. Exact times, photographs, and conversations he'd managed to overhear with hidden microphones. One particular detail haunted me. Michael knew far too much about my kids. Rob had recordings where Michael casually talked about their habits and personalities as if he'd spent real time around them. But I needed more. The most painful question lingered. Were my children actually mine? Every odd detail suddenly seemed glaringly obvious. Our middle child's unusual hair pattern, nothing like mine or Hannah's, the oldest, who didn't resemble anyone in my family. Yet suspicions alone weren't proof. I decided on DNA tests, disguising them as a fun family experiment. Hannah didn't even question me when I handed out the swabs. "School science project," I joked when the kids asked, forcing a smile. My hands shook as I sealed and mailed the samples. 2 agonizing weeks passed. I sat frozen in my car outside the lab, staring at the sealed envelope, afraid to breathe. When I finally tore it open, the words blurred before me. No match, not one child shared my DNA. My fingers went numb, nausea rising. 3 children, 3 betrayals. That night, I fought to stay composed. Hannah talked casually about her day while I pretended to eat dinner. Her laughter grated my nerves, but I held back. Acting impulsively now would ruin everything. The stakes were too high, our savings, the house, and especially the kids. None of this was their fault. Over the next few days, I carefully planned my next steps. I studied books on divorce strategies and quietly moved some money into a private account. I spoke with an attorney, presenting her with Rob's evidence and the damning DNA results. She was practical and reassuring, confident we had more than enough for a solid case. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. One night, while Hannah slept quietly beside me, I scrolled through Rob's latest findings. He'd captured photos of her and Michael spending a weekend at an upscale boutique hotel. The images were undeniable. Her arm casually looped around his as they entered, her silhouette clearly visible in the room's window. My chest tightened, realizing any affection I'd held for Hannah had vanished, replaced now by emptiness and pain. Yet my feelings about the kids stayed the same. Biology aside, they were still my children in every meaningful sense. I dreaded how they'd react once everything came out. Would they resent me for not being their biological father, or blame Hannah for the lies? And then came the second blow, a deeper wound. Rob handed over a new folder one evening, his face grim. "This involves your mother," he warned gently. Confused at first, I thumbed through the content slowly, but soon the truth was clear. My own mother had been involved from the start. Phone records revealed constant calls between her and Michael, texts coordinating secret meetings, even a letter filled with encouragement and instructions. She'd been quietly orchestrating behind my back, helping Hannah hide the affair and keep me oblivious. My hands shook as I closed the file, memories rushing back. The visits when my mother praised Hannah's devotion, subtly implying how grateful I should be for such a wife. All of it was a lie. Anger surged through me, transforming into determination. This wasn't just about my broken marriage anymore. Now I was fighting for truth and for the innocent children caught in the middle, unaware their lives had been founded on lies. The very next morning, I sat down with my lawyer, Jessica. Known for her toughness in complicated divorce cases, she listened intently as I laid out Rob's evidence, the DNA results, and the financial maneuvers we'd started uncovering. She took rapid notes, absorbing every detail. Finally, Jessica looked up. "You're in a good spot legally," she assured me, "but we have to proceed carefully. If we're careless, Hannah and Michael could make claims on your assets. Your mother's involvement complicates things, but it also gives us some advantage." Advantage, the word sounded harsh but necessary. Jessica advised moving money offshore immediately. "Everything legal," she emphasized. I quickly transferred portions of my savings into an overseas account, out of Hannah's or Michael's reach. Simultaneously, we set up secure trust funds for the kids. The trusts guaranteed they'd be protected financially, whatever happened next, safely beyond Hannah and Michael's influence. But maintaining normalcy through all this became my greatest challenge. Every morning I sat at breakfast, watching Hannah casually pour cereal for the kids and laugh at their jokes, all the while aware of the deep betrayal she'd inflicted on our family. I steadied myself during these moments, silently reminding myself of the strategy ahead. "Is everything all right?" she asked one morning, noticing me staring. "Yeah," I replied calmly, forcing a slight smile. "Just thinking about work." She didn't press further. She rarely did, lost as she was in her web of deceit, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath my mask. Rob continued uncovering details even darker than I'd expected. He revealed Hannah's frequent hospital emergencies were entirely fabricated. Once she even arranged for a friend to impersonate a nurse during a call, right before stepping into another boutique hotel with Michael. And my mother had been fully complicit, covering Hannah's absences at family gatherings with smooth explanations. "She's just overwhelmed," or "she needed a little break." The betrayal was deeper than I'd ever imagined. Rob also revealed Michael's deeper involvement. He wasn't just Hannah's lover, but someone with big ambitions. He had borrowed money from Hannah, indirectly siphoning my own earnings, to fund unsuccessful business projects. Knowing that my hard-earned money had gone straight into Michael's hands filled me with rage. Jessica and I immediately began preparations to quietly freeze joint accounts, redirecting my salary into a new separate account. Meanwhile, I meticulously documented Hannah's spending habits, every mysterious withdrawal, every unexplained charge. The trail of evidence became clearer and more incriminating by the day. At home, I continued playing the role of the unsuspecting husband, but Hannah was still oblivious, comfortable in her deception. One evening, she surprised me with an oddly reflective comment. "Do you ever think about how much things have changed?" she asked, sounding unusually thoughtful. "Constantly," I answered honestly. She offered a weak smile, lacking sincerity. "I just want us to be happy again." I nodded silently, nearly choking on the bitter irony of her words. I knew confrontation was inevitable, but timing mattered. I couldn't rush. Our finances, our house, and the children's well-being were at stake. Slowly, I began preparing them emotionally. In casual conversations during car rides or bedtime stories, I slipped in gentle lessons about trust and honesty, about families getting through tough times together. They didn't sense anything unusual, but I hoped my subtle messages would soften the blow when everything inevitably surfaced. Then one afternoon, Rob called with new information, his voice signaling urgency. "You're really not going to like hearing this," Rob said gravely. "What's happened now?" I asked cautiously. "Michael's been stealing from Hannah, and she might not even know it. He's been draining her accounts to fund another relationship, maybe even more than one." My grip on the phone tightened. "Does she suspect anything?" "It doesn't seem that way," Rob explained carefully, "but this gives you even more ammunition. He's not just messing up your marriage, he's scamming her too." I ended the call feeling more resolved than ever. Hannah and Michael weren't just selfish, they were careless, and they'd soon face the consequences. The days before the planned confrontation felt surreal. I played games with the kids, assisted them with homework, and took everyone to the park. Hannah laughed like everything was perfectly normal, completely unaware of what I knew. Even my mother called, her voice deceptively sweet and caring. "How have things been, Ben?" "Fine," I replied calmly, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Just remember, I'm always here for you," she offered hesitantly. Her false sincerity made my blood boil, but I held myself back. "Thanks, Mom," I responded evenly. "I'll remember that." After hanging up, I stared at the phone, overwhelmed by disbelief. My own mother had betrayed me, siding with Hannah and Michael instead. This realization only fueled my determination. I decided the big reveal would be memorable, shared openly among family and friends. Hannah had set the table beautifully. Soft candlelight flickered warmly, casting gentle shadows around the dining room. Aromas of roast turkey and spiced cider mingled comfortably with the quiet conversations of our gathered guests. Hannah laughed freely alongside my mother, decorating and chatting as if nothing was amiss. Meanwhile, I quietly gathered my resolve, readying myself to unveil months of investigation and carefully masked feelings. Tonight was the night everything would shift. I looked toward my kids, chatting happily at the far end of the table. Their innocent laughter offered me brief comfort against the storm I was about to start. My attorney, Jessica, had confirmed repeatedly that my legal position was solid. The children's trusts were safe, legal paperwork was prepared, and my financial safety nets overseas were firmly in place. The children would remain protected, but Hannah and Michael were about to face the full weight of their decisions. Taking a deep breath, I stood up at the head of the table and lightly tapped my glass with a spoon. Conversation slowed, everyone's eyes turning curiously toward me. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," I began calmly. I started speaking, keeping my voice calm even though I felt the heaviness of the moment. "Family has always been everything to me. I've always believed that honesty and trust keep a family strong. That's why tonight matters so much." Hannah smiled gently at me, her fingers resting lightly on her wine glass. My mother watched me with anticipation, clearly expecting a warm, sentimental toast. And Michael was there too, pretending to be nothing more than a family friend, leaning comfortably back in his chair, looking completely at ease. I quietly reached beneath the table and brought out several envelopes, each labeled clearly. "Before we go on, I've prepared something special for everyone," I announced calmly, distributing them one by one around the table. Hannah paused when I gave her an envelope, our hands brushing slightly. "What's this about?" she asked cautiously. "You'll find out soon enough," I replied calmly, stepping back to observe the reactions. My mother was the first to respond, her face losing color as she flipped through the pages. "Ben," she stammered, clearly shaken. "Let me explain." "Explain what exactly, Mom?" My voice was cold and steady. "How you helped Hannah hide her affair? Or how you lied to me and my kids?" Hannah's envelope landed sharply on the table as she stared at its contents, completely stunned. "Ben," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Where did you get all this?" "From someone who knows what they're doing," I replied simply. "Every lay, every secret meeting, every phone call, it's all there." Michael reacted more dramatically, shoving his chair away from the table as he jumped to his feet, visibly angry. "This is insane," he protested loudly. "You don't have a clue what you're saying." I turned toward him calmly, allowing a bitter smile. "Actually, Michael, I do. You've been stealing money from Hannah, pretending it's for business deals. Those side relationships you're juggling, the real state of your finances, it's all documented. You're nothing but a con man, and now everybody here sees exactly who you are." The room quickly filled with chaos. Hannah burst into tears, my mother pleaded desperately for my attention, and Michael kept shouting defensive remarks. Friends and family whispered anxiously, stunned by the revelations. The kids sat quietly, confusion filling their faces as they tried to make sense of the noise and tension around them. Taking a deep breath, I lifted my hands to quiet everyone down. "That's enough," I announced firmly. "This isn't the time for excuses or explanations. It's time to face reality." I knelt beside my children, looking into their eyes gently. "You're the most important part of my life," I told them softly. "Everything I've done has been for you. Tomorrow, we start fresh, and we'll get through this together." Hannah's eyes widened sharply. "What are you talking about?" "I've already filed for divorce," I replied calmly, despite the turmoil inside. "The trust funds for the kids are protected, and you'll never have access to them. You can try fighting for custody if you want, but considering the evidence I've gathered, you won't win." Her crying turned into desperate begging as she reached out toward me, but I stepped away. "You made your decisions, Hannah," I said quietly. "Now you have to deal with the consequences." The aftermath hit quickly and hard. My mother, standing among her friends, collapsed once her involvement was revealed. She went from a respected figure in her community to someone whispered about and shunned. Hannah's professional reputation suffered greatly once her colleagues learned the truth about her actions. The image she'd built so carefully collapsed into humiliation and regret. Michael's fabricated life also unraveled rapidly. His manipulative networks vanished, and all his shady financial schemes collapsed. Last I heard, he'd resorted to working as an accountant, far removed from the flashy persona he'd once flaunted. Within weeks, I sold my business, combining the profits with my carefully protected savings to rebuild my life. Jessica guided me through the final legal processes, and soon the kids and I were boarding a flight to Singapore. There, I had dependable friends and a genuine chance at a fresh start. The move wasn't easy at first. My children initially struggled to adapt to the massive changes, but eventually, they found happiness in exploring a new city full of possibilities. I concentrated on supporting them emotionally, ensuring they always felt secure and loved despite the challenges. Singapore became our new home and refuge. I took a consulting job at a tech startup, a role with less pressure that allowed me to truly focus on my family. The children quickly adjusted, thriving in their schools and forming friendships, their resilience impressing me daily. Occasionally, I get small reminders of the past, an email from an old friend, an article mentioning Hannah's troubles, or just a random memory surfacing briefly. But I never lingered on those thoughts. My priority was moving forward, creating a life built on honesty and trust, where those values weren't just ideals, but genuine parts of our daily lives. Whether Hannah or my mother ever fully grasped the severity of their betrayal didn't matter anymore. I had made peace with it. The life I was building now with my children, full of new beginnings and authentic connections, was all I needed. After months of turmoil, I finally felt truly free, and that freedom alone made everything I'd gone through worthwhile. I have selected 2 more videos that I think you will enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot.